Alright guys, so in this video I'm going to talk about how I arrived at van dwelling. Okay, so what brought me to the point to where I decided to live out of a van? Prior to this lifestyle, I was renting small apartments. I say apartment. I never really lived in an apartment complex. I always lived in small duplexes or cottages, either a side-by-side unit or stacked on top, one on top of another unit. I chose those places because they felt most like my own home rather than being a part of a big complex. Okay, so what I was doing prior to this lifestyle was I was living in San Diego, California, my hometown, born and raised there, and I was owner-operator of a landscape maintenance business. I did that for almost 10 years, almost all of my 30s, and somewhere around mid-30s, early 30s, I was becoming increasingly dissatisfied with life in general. I did enjoy what I did for work. I enjoyed working outside, being my own boss, but I was really tied to the business. I was working all the time. I was able to afford to rent the kind of places that I wanted to live in, and just kind of increasingly bought more and more stuff to fill up my place because I was really discontent. I was really just unsatisfied with what life was providing for me and the decisions I was making, and things just seemed to get worse. I basically became really depressed, and with that depression also came an increasingly negative outlook on life. Basically got in the frame of mind where the world I lived in sucked, and I was just no longer really wanted to be here. I really couldn't see myself living in a way that would make me happy. All my choices seemed to be a dead end, and I was depressed. That's really the definition of depression. It's really hard to describe to people that have not experienced it, but just nothing was appealing to me. All the things that I enjoyed doing in the past became less and less appealing, and I basically ended up just living to work, and I increasingly became more negative, and I was really involved with watching a lot of news, listening to talk radio, things that were basically giving me a very negative feed. Everything I was seeing on TV was everything wrong in the world. Everything I was listening to on talk radio was basically just complaining about how everything was wrong in the world. All I could see was the negative things. And that was when I really decided things were bad. Things were to the point to where I needed to make a change, or else I was just going to become so depressed that I just wouldn't want to live anymore. So what I did is I just made a decision one day. I just decided that I was going to give up my business and try to start my life over. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I was going to try to start over. So what I did to start over was basically start selling off all my possessions, and I kind of had some idea in my head that I was going to do something extreme. Once I shed all those possessions, I had some idea that I was going to do something just totally different, totally out of my comfort zone. I started researching like these volunteer programs where I could go to like a third world country and be of some sort of aid. And, you know, like I had mentioned, I was seeing all these things wrong in the world and that things were hopeless. And I knew that I wasn't so depressed that I knew that the way out of that was to do good things and to help other people. So I was looking into these programs where I could volunteer. Unfortunately, all of those programs, it costs a lot to do that. You know, you have to get yourself to these places, and it's not something that's cheap. So after kind of coming to a dead end with researching that kind of stuff, I had, you know, in that process, sold all of my possessions, or close to all of them, moved back home with my parents, and, you know, I let my business fold, so I was no longer working, I was unemployed, and decided it was just time to kind of like start from square one, start from the bottom. I took a part-time job working for In-N-Out Burger, great company, West Coast burger chain, great food, great company to work for. And one of the great things about taking that job was everyone I worked with was really positive, mostly younger, just happy, positive people. And it was great for me to be around that, especially after working by myself, alone, doing yard work for so many years. It was very refreshing to be around that. So I started to really come out of the depression funk, and through my research of looking into these volunteer programs and basically just an alternate lifestyle. I was looking into people that were starting like homesteading communities and stuff like that, somewhere I could show up and put in work to be a part of a simple living community. And in that research of that kind of stuff, a website, Cheap RV Living, came up, cheaprvliving.com, and it really had a huge impact on me. That site is run by a guy, Bob Wells. Those of you that follow my channel, I go to the RTR gathering. It's an annual kind of mobile living van dweller gathering in Quartzsite, Arizona. And Bob's blog really spoke to me. The first time I went to his site, I happened to hit it at a time where his latest blog post was really, he does this a lot in some of his blogs, where he'll just preach. He really preaches to a demographic of people, mostly retired, that are trying to live on, say, a pension or a Social Security check, a small amount of money, and not have any luck doing it. And he feels that he's found a way for people like that to live simply, to move into a converted van or small camper, live off of public land, and be able to thrive, be content and happy, living on very little money. And that's the cheaprvliving.com. And one of the other things he really preaches is immersing yourself in nature in that process. And that was something that really hit me. It was something that I grew up with. I grew up camping. I grew up backpacking, doing primitive camping. I was involved in a Boy Scout troop that really focused on that type of camping. So that was a really big part of my childhood, which at that point in my life were really the happiest years of my life. And it's something that I had kind of lost touch with over time. So finding that website was really like a bright, shining light in what was at that time a very dark world for me. I not only had gotten very depressed up till that point, but I was also, like I said, I had a very negative, dark outlook on life in general, on the world. All I could see were the bad things in the world. They're all still there, a lot of those things that I used to dwell on, but I don't dwell on them anymore. I'm able to see the full spectrum. And there is a lot of good, there is a lot of wonderful, beautiful things in this world to embrace. And I have since found those. And it was very much an evolution, a progress for me to get to where I'm at now. So basically, after finding Bob's blog, I was really turned on to the van thing. He has a lot of other information about other vehicles, RVs, small RVs, truck campers, people living out of SUVs, even Priuses. So he really, the whole idea is just to change your lifestyle and to not be bound by rent or mortgages anymore. And that was very appealing to me, because that was one of the things that really got me down, is that I'm always going to have to work this amount of time to be able to pay this amount of rent to just survive and get by. And through reading Bob's blog, I was really turned on to the idea that that's not the case. That is not necessary. There is another way to live. And for me, that's when things started to change. When I found that, things really started to open up. And the internet is great for linking you up with different things once you've searched a certain topic. So things really started to open up for me. I actually initially bought a small RV. I bought a little Toyota Dolphin. It's the small Toyota truck front end with the RV camper on back. And I only had that for a short amount of time, and I realized it was too big. The performance was too low. I mean, those things are super slow up hills. And I just, after owning that and putting some work into it, I just realized how much work it is to maintain RVs. They're poorly built and poorly designed from the factory. So I decided to sell it, and I started looking into cargo vans. And I felt like cargo vans are built very strongly, just the outside shell, and then everything on the inside I could build to my liking, build it the way I thought would last the longest and be the strongest. So I did that. So once I got the van, things really moved fast. I bought the van in October of 2013. I converted it within about a month and a half, and I was living in it by the end of January 2014. So I've been in the van over a couple years now, been on the road for about 8 months, and really getting that van and converting it and making the decision to live out of it was probably the best decision that I ever made. Like I had mentioned, I was making increasingly bad decisions in my life up until that point. When I was in that really negative state of mind, I found that not only was I making a lot of bad decisions, but I was making a lot of bad choices with the people I surrounded myself with, the friends that I chose. The saying goes, misery loves company, and it was very true for me. I was becoming increasingly more miserable, and I chose to be around people that were the same. And we would basically just hang out and complain about how much the world sucked. And, happy people don't want to be around miserable people. It wears off on you. So separating myself from those friends, those people, and kind of starting over in this van was really the best decision I ever made. And it didn't take me long after living in the van to really be relieved a lot of that depression and negative outlook. And the thing that really did it for me, I believe, is, like Bob suggested, immersing yourself in nature. When I first started living in the van, I was doing it in my hometown in San Diego, urban camping, just sleeping in, on the streets, parked on the side of the road overnight, and then during the day, working my part-time job and hanging out in public parks, open space parks, at the beach. And when things really started to change for me emotionally, and especially with my outlook, was spending time at the beach. I would spend many, many hours, many days, just gazing at the open ocean. And through doing that, things started to change for me. I started to have experience just appreciating nature and the planet I was living on itself in its beauty, that those negative things that I was dwelling on for that period in my life, where all I could see was all that bad stuff in the world, that started to fade away, and it became overpowered by all the great things in the world that I could see and experience. And over time, especially up until this day, that has been what does it for me the most. That's why I avoid cities so much, and I go directly into the boondocking areas, the places where I can be the closest to nature, because I know that's what does it for me. Cities are neat. It's neat to experience, the architecture and the different subtleties and, culture and stuff. But that only does so much for me. The experience for me is being out here in nature, and that's why I pursue the places that I do, and it's working out well for me. So it was really kind of, I was just led into this through research, through looking for a different way to live. Basically, I was feeling really, really stuck with my life the way it was before, and now I don't feel that. I don't feel stuck anymore. The future is wide open, and I think one of the biggest questions I get from people is, how did I overcome, or did I have any fears or apprehensions before doing this, and how did I overcome them? And of course, yes, I had plenty of fears and apprehension, and I just had to do it. I just had to jump in with both feet, and I think the thing that really helped me overcome the fears is spending that time in nature, having those experiences, just being and sitting and being surrounded and letting nature do its thing around me. It really reassured me that this is the right place for me. This is where I'm supposed to be. And whatever I can do to put myself in that position to have more and more of those experiences, that I should do it. And this van, this adventure van that I've built, it gets me there. It does the job. It may not be the nicest van, the newest van, have all the coolest things in it, but it does the job. It gets me where I need to be happy and content in life. And that's why I say that living in this van, making this decision to live in this van, is the best decision I've ever made. It allows me to do what I need to do to get where I need to be happy. And that's the most important thing. What I'm doing in my life for myself, it's a big deal, and I'm proud of myself. I've really come from a very dark place, and I've made it through it, and I've made a new life for myself. And for me, that's something that's really huge. And I really just wanted to share that progression experience with you guys, because I know we're all different. A lot of people that live like this, they don't come from that. They just were at a point to where they're happy people and they just want to take it to the next level. For me, it was a really big deal for me to get myself out of the life I was living and build a new life for myself. So That's really just what I wanted to share, kind of how I arrived at this and how it's going for me. I can't say it enough. It's the best decision I've ever made in my life to move into this van. And I moved into this van with really no plans. I didn't have the initial ideas of work camping and seasonal jobs and traveling. I just started with I don't want to pay rent, and things just kind of went from there. Once I got into the van, was working less, had less stress, I was able to think more clearly, connecting with nature, building self-confidence, and things just keep progressing and keeping me down a path that just keeps getting more and more exciting. So I hope this was helpful for any of you out there that was just wondering where I came from and how it's going for me. If you're in a similar place, there is a way out. And if you're just interested in traveling and mobile living, it is a great life out here. It can be done, and I would recommend it to anybody to at least try. If you decide it's not for you, you can always go back to how you were living before. But for me, there's no going back. This is where it's at. This is the life for me. So I hope that was helpful, and we'll be checking in soon. See you in the next video. Take care, guys. Peace.